Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're all doing well out there. I'm Victoria Wilder. Welcome to my home. And today, I am continuing my read of my novel, Lullaby of the Lilitu, which is a gothic urban fantasy. Um, and if you haven't been watching so far, I recommend you start at the beginning because otherwise you're going to get some spoilers. And today we are reading part 3, chapter 1, and on until I get tired of reading, I suppose. Um, Please forgive me if my voice is a little scratchy or nasally. I woke up with an abundance of cat allergy response and dust responses, so forgive me, but I will do my best. And as you may have heard before, if you are new and you do want to continue from here, I am not doing the official audiobook. I am simply trying to offer what I have to offer during this time when a lot of people are at home and looking for something to occupy their minds and their time. And maybe, hopefully, if you like it, your heart. So let's go ahead and get started. This is part 3, chapter 1. September 12th, 2034. 1. I awoke to the sound of yelling coming from the room next to mine. Tabitha's voice echoed down the hall. You're using too much. Using too much. Victor's lilted voice lilted under hers. Cher, what could you mean? It's blood. It isn't ordinary blood. You know that. You're hurting yourself and you're killing her. I crept from my room into the cavernous, candlelit hall. My feet sank into the thick carpet as I edged my way towards the door. In the 9 months since I'd awakened, Tabitha had never yelled. She and Victor never argued. Not that I had heard, anyway. Did you ever think that maybe it's her blood that's preventing us? Tabitha's voice cracked. That you're exchanging starting a family for a quick high? The floor creaked under my weight, and the voices inside stopped. In a flash, the door opened and Tabitha grinned at me. Behind her, Victor sat in a large chair, his long legs hanging languid over one side. He draped the chair and greeted me with a serene smirk. Their faces belied nothing of their previous tension. Rio, good evening. I peeked into the massive room, easily twice the size of my own. Decadent furniture, large enough to make Victor and Tabitha look small, filled the space. Greens and golds flooded my senses, along with the strong fragrance of jasmine and wormwood. Tabitha rubbed her arms. She cocked her head to the side, smiling. What do you need, sweetheart? My lesson? I glanced at Victor, who lounged with closed eyes, one leg swaying in small, gentle circles. He didn't speak at all. We're supposed to do lists of Second Rhapsody, I added. Tabitha pressed her hands to her cheeks. I completely forgot. I'm so sorry, dear. I'm not in the space for that piece tonight. She glanced back at her husband. Or any piece, for that matter. I need to spend some time in the meditation room. Wait, but... She grabbed my shoulder, turning me into the hall and closing the door behind her as she guided me towards the large double doors. You hungry? Yuri's home tonight. He wants to take you hunting. An involuntary grin spread across my face. When Yuri left for Tibet back in June, I had no idea how long he'd be gone. Days stretched into weeks and weeks into months with no word. Now he'd returned. Tabitha and I made our way to the den where Yuri waited. She excused herself soon after we arrived, hugging Yuri before he disappeared into her room behind the library. I stared at my brother's face, admiring the way the light fell on the angles of his wide nose. His dark hair fell into his eyes, dusty and tousled. "You're as handsome as ever," I whispered. He pulled me into a tight hug, laughing as I pushed back. "You smell like dirt." I scrunched my nose. "Did you sleep in the ground?" "I've been climbing, camping." He laughed, his eyes catching the flickering candlelight behind me. "I met someone, or sort of. I have to tell you all about them." "Me too. I made a friend." Yuri raised an eyebrow, prompting me to continue. "Well, I'm not sure he knows we're friends. I met him once in a park, but I've followed him a few times when I went hunting in the city. He's interesting." Yuri burst into laughter and kissed my forehead. "Little night stalker. You must tell me more later, my rose. He sounds delightful." With that, he dashed across the room and out the door. His excitement was contagious. It bubbled up inside of me like a twisting river. "Where are we going?" I asked when I caught up to him at the stables. He flashed a mischievous grin. "London, of course." We we headed out with me on Zilla and Yuri on a black and white Clydesdale, Pepper. Only Yuri and Samson ever let me ride free through the forest. Everyone else insisted I take a carriage to the outskirts and hunt on foot from there, lest I be injured. Yuri trusted me, and Samson never seemed to care much. We rode to the shore where our boat waited. "Where's the captain?" I asked, stepping into the small wooden rowboat. Yuri smiled, following suit. "Why, I'm the captain, my spoiled little sister." We sat down, and he rowed us across the River Weaver. A car waited on the other shore without a driver. As he drove, Yuri filled our trip with tales of mountains, of spending days in the woods and sleeping in caves. 2. We arrived in London and stopped in front of a large building a few hours later. The sign outside read "Golden Morning" in big red letters. A statue of Cayenne's seven-pointed star shone beneath the words. "What are we doing here?" I asked. "Isn't this where we manufacture Effusion de Sang?" Yuri stepped out of the car and opened my door. "Yes, but we're here for a tour." He winked at me. "Later, I'll show you my favorite feeding grounds. But you must learn about our grand facility and what your father's been up to." He headed for the entrance without waiting for a response. As we walked through the doors, bright white lights blinded me. Yuri laughed as I shielded my face. "You need to leave the manor more, little one. The rest of the world uses fluorescence." I blinked to adjust and found myself staring at a white, sterile walls. A small yellow plaque interrupted the stark white canvas. It read, "Golden Morning Laboratory, established 1923 by Oro and Hansel Shahar, aliases of Cayenne and Victor." A young man sat behind a cream and silver desk in the middle of the room. "Kitten? Hi, kitten. What's going on?" "Sorry, guys. The queen demands." "Hi, baby." "Yeah. Wow. Hello." Okay, yes, yes. I'll just finish this chapter, okay? Sorry, guys. Okay. Yes, kitten. Sorry, guys. The kitten demands attention. Hi, come here. What's up? Oh, wow. Wow, really? That's amazing. You're so precious. She wanted food, but there's food in her bowl. so I'm not sure how to help her. Okay, where were we? A young man sat behind a cream and silver desk in the middle of the room. A series of doors lined the walls behind him. He jumped up and adjusted his thin black tie. Mr. Sylvain, lovely to see you here again, he exclaimed. He flashed me a tight smile before returning his focus to Yuri. His heartbeat quickened as he looked into Yuri's eyes. The man didn't seem to like seeing him with a strange woman. Hello, Jamie, Yuri greeted the young man. This is my sister Miriam. Jamie's brow lifted and his mouth opened a little before broadening into a more relaxed smile. I'd like to give her a tour of the labs and introduce her to Dr. Meyer, Yuri continued. The young man sat and pressed some buttons under his desk. She'll be down shortly, sir. Can I get you anything while you wait? He batted his lashes, leaning forward over his desk. That'll be all, Jamie. Yuri flashed him a grin and turned towards me. Wait till you see what I've found, my girl. A young woman came through one of the doors, taking long strides towards us. Her blonde hair bounced above her shoulders as she stretched out her arms. Yuri hugged her before turning and introducing me. Her lips curled in the familiar way I had seen Rosalind's when she was amused. Master Rio, it's lovely to finally meet you, she said, extending a hand. I'm Ava. Just like the rest of the room, she was pristine in her white lab coat and gray slacks. I took her hand, wondering at her familiar traits. You're Anna's sister. She winked and waved for us to follow her towards one of the doors. We have strong features. She pulled a small card from her pocket and swiped it. Then she pressed her thumb against a pad by the door. Jamie, we aren't to be disturbed, she called behind us as we entered a short hall. 5 doors lined the walls, 2 on either side and 1 at the back. She swiped the card again to unlock the back door, and we entered a different hall with a single door on either side. She led us left, bringing us into a Spartan room with nothing more than a desk and filing cabinet. Ava is one of the few humans I would call irreplaceable, Yuri said as she punched in the lock code behind us. She's almost as intelligent as I am, and she's the only human I trust with my knowledge of Cayenne's businesses. She's far more useful than her mute sister. How is Anna? Still taking her medicine? Ava asked. And sharing it seems. Victor doesn't seem to go a day without a taste. You lot better be careful, she laughed. It can be addictive. Ava walked to the wall in the back of the room where a single small photo of an apple on a white background hung in its frame. She lifted the photo, revealing a hidden keypad, and entered a code. With a quiet rush of air, the wall cracked and lifted, a plaster curtain concealing a secret window to a small, white room. A man leaned over a white bassinet and pulled out a bundle of blankets. He cradled the blankets close to his chest for a moment before laying it on a nearby changing table. A nursery? I furrowed my brows. Why would Cayenne hide a nursery in a science facility? I looked to Yuri for an answer, but neither he nor Ava spoke. The man bounced the now giggling infant. Its voice poured into the room through hidden speakers. The caretaker opened a small fridge in the back of the room and grabbed an opaque white bottle, which he placed into a buzzing machine. The man didn't seem to notice his spectators through the window. The machine beeped and he grabbed the bottle immediately. He turned it upside down and dripped a few red droplets onto his hand before offering the bottle to the tiny person in his arms, who sucked at it with a greedy sigh. My breath caught in my chest. You're feeding the baby blood? That, Master Rio, is subject D9, a Dampier. It isn't fully human, nor is it all Lilitu. That is Master Cayenne's greatest experiment. A wide grin spread across Ava's face as she watched the nurse feeding the small infant. You see, there's a limit to how many can share in our powers, as Lilitu, Yuri explained. But Cayenne wanted to fill the world with our kind, and he's convinced he's found a loophole. He's obsessed with Lilitu reproduction, and D9 is the most successful trial yet. It's still alive after 4 months and healthier than any of the others have been, Ava added. Why are you showing me this? I asked, trying to ignore the sinking feeling in my stomach. Yuri leaned back against the small desk. Mia told me what happened this summer. You sleepwalked into the sun. I had a nightmare, I scoffed. Lilitu don't dream, my sweet. Yuri kept his voice level and pierced me with his gaze. You didn't wake up for days. Nia thought you were going to die. I'm sorry to have disappointed her. He laughed. Don't be catty, little Rose. She was worried. His face became serious, and he ran his left hand through his hair, the black wisps falling right and back in front of his eyes. So was I. After I heard, I decided the time for secrets had passed, and that I will no longer abide by Cayenne's rules if it endangers you. After all, if he weren't toying with your brain, he's not toying with my brain. He wants to protect me. The spell he used, it's meant to shield me from traumatic memories. I thought back to our conversation following my first visit to the village. He didn't know the side effects. He didn't know I'd lose time or sleepwalk. And you're fine with him suppressing your memory. The muscles in Yuri's jaw twitched. His voice remained level, but I could smell the rage brewing beneath. The spell isn't perfect, I said, hoping to quell the tension before one of us burst. I've had flashes of my past, and I'm honestly not sure I want to remember whatever he's protecting me from. Don't be naive, my girl. I've known Cayenne almost 2 centuries, and every move he makes is a deliberate choice. There's no room for mistakes with Cayenne unless... He pushed off the desk and walked towards the door where Ava awaited us, having already closed the wall view to the nursery. He grabbed my arm as he passed and guided me into the hall. Your beloved papa once trusted me with everything he did, even when I was human. I've always been his accountant and main business consultant. About 15 years ago, that all changed. He started keeping secrets about his experiments, including you at first. Master Yuri! Ava's interjection came too late. How could you say that to me? I whispered. The knot in my stomach twisted and spiked into my chest. I am not an experiment, whatever that means. Cayenne loves me. He took a deep breath and turned to face me. The earnest look in his eyes touched me, and I softened as he took my hands. I don't tell you this to hurt you, my Rose, but you must understand the truth. Cayenne found you, but his love for you is possessive. Truly, we are your family, but he's too old to remember what love is. If he did, he wouldn't have kept you in that asylum for 13 years, feeding you his blood. The words landed like a blow to my chest. They couldn't be true, yet somehow I knew they were. The hall around me shimmered from side to side as images, broken memories, swam through my mind. A small, frail bed in the corner of a dark room, an almost empty kitchen with a few chefs milling about, and a door marked staff only. A small, pale hand in my own, with thin fingers and a familiar picture peeking from under the sleeve cuffs. Thorns. Why was she there? Rio. Yuri shook me by my shoulders, calling my name over and over. Memories floated in my head, disconnected and unclear. Yuri called to me, his voice traveling from somewhere far away. A cold darkness crept around me, blackening my vision. A hard slap to the face brought me back to my surroundings. Yuri inspected me while Ava passed the flashlight over my eyes. My head ached at the looks of concern and curiosity on their faces. I stumbled to the floor and crawled backwards, putting some distance between us. An asylum. Cayenne had said that everything he'd done was to protect me. Maybe I was dangerous before. Maybe I needed to be there. I squeezed my eyes shut. Yuri would have me believe my father saw me as no more than a game, that his love for me was in the interest of his own blind ambition. Even if I did begin as an experiment, Cayenne's love for me was true. He couldn't hide it any more than Tabitha and Yuri. My heart broke. Yuri believed Cayenne's love for me was false, and he thought he could make me believe it. No, I couldn't believe him, and I couldn't stand to see the worry in his eyes twisted by resentment towards my father. Yuri and Ava inched closer. Every part of me urged me to leave this place. I sped to the end of the hall and pulled the doorknob. The heavy door refused to budge as I pulled. Let me out! I spun around, tears already pouring from the corners of my eyes. They'd run up behind me, but made no movement for the door. Was that pity in their eyes? I yanked Ava's arm and pressed my teeth to her throat. Let me out, I demanded, trying to keep my tone level. Yuri raised his hands, palms out to me, but seeing that I'd bared my fangs, he kept his distance. I dragged a tooth across Ava's skin as she trembled in my grip. She whimpered as a small bead of blood purled and dripped down onto her collar. I lapped at its sweetness. Rio, please. Before he finished speaking, I snatched Ava's keycard and threw her towards my brother. He stumbled and fell backwards, catching her in his arms. I unlocked the door and sped from the lobby out into the street. I headed towards Katya's to feed and forget, but ran past when I noticed the large crowd out front. Instead, I chose another familiar path towards St. Anne's churchyard. Three? I picked up the smell of smoke and sweat close to the churchyard and followed the scent down Old Compton Road. A few people sauntered about in the early evening, none particularly appetizing. I followed the piney odor onto Charing Cross, walking slow, glad Yuri hadn't come after me. The fresh air filled my lungs, clearing the muddle of thoughts clouding my mind. I needed this space, and to feed. And I didn't need to hear any more of his ridiculous accusations against my father. The streets quieted and the smoke faded. I inhaled, taking in the night air to try to pick it up again, but instead got a strong whiff of sweet onion and copper. In the same moment, a scream echoed from somewhere ahead of me, and a man's voice yelled, "The hell's going on here?" Footsteps pounded around the corner onto a small street to my right, and I followed the sounds. A man ran towards two people struggling on the ground. The smells of smoke and beer trailed behind him. "Will!" I yelled, jogging towards him. He looked back for a second, but turned when one of the fighters screamed. He sprinted towards them, tackling the man on top and knocking him to the ground. Blood covered the pavement, a mix of human and something else. The human laid still on the ground, his heart slowing with each breath. William straddled the other, throwing punches into its face as it screeched and swung back at him. In a quick swoop, the creature scratched across William's eyes and knocked him to the side, sending his glasses shattering against the ground. William rolled over, holding both hands to his face. He pulled his shirt up and pressed the fabric to his wounds, grunting against the pain. The wheezing monster crawled back to its feet behind him and jumped onto his back. It slashed at him, furious and snarling. William slouched forward, pinned under the beast as it reared its head back, bearing 6 fangs much like my own. I broke out of my momentary shock and sped forward, pushing the creature as hard as possible and sending it flying through a large trash bin's thin walls. William groaned on the ground. The creature moaned within the bin, a loud, howling moan that shook the trees. I tossed the man over my shoulder. He mumbled something about my size, falling over me like a doll. The creature shuffled in the dumpster. Let's not stick around. I sped back towards Charing Cross, leaving the beast behind us as I followed the path to Goslet Yard. We stopped behind a hedge near a large red brick building. Teenage girls milled about within the building's small courtyard, but the night was quiet and the sidewalks were empty. I dropped William a little harder than I'd intended, and he groaned as he hit the ground. He rolled into a sitting position, still holding his bloodied hands in front of his face, and leaned his back against the thick bushes. He looked up at me through his fingers, fear and confusion twisting his expression. Coughs spasmed through his back. He gagged, turning to his side to hurl. I stood over him, panting and listening for the creature. It was just like the one we'd seen in June. After I'd met the dark-haired woman in my nightmare and sleepwalked into the sun, I had forgotten all about the creature that went after those girls. Now we'd come across another. William winced as tears poured from his closed eyes and mingled with the blood on his face. The skin swelled around his eyes, leaving the barest slivers of gray peeking through. What the fuck was that? What the fuck are you? A scream sounded from far off, too far for human ears to hear. The beast must have found another victim. Still, it was only a matter of time before he followed William's blood. This had to be the creature Yuri wrote about. The smell almost overpowered even my senses, though I'd hunted many other humans since June. I stood over William as he lifted his shirt and pressed it against the scratches. Against my will, my eyes dropped, following the ridges of his abdomen. Blood pooled in the waistband of his pants. I sucked cool air into my lungs, my mouth watering at the salty aroma of his blood and sweat. My vision reddened as I watched him lying on the ground, staunching blood with his shirt. I reached down and placed a hand on his left shoulder, ignoring the warm, sticky fabric. I peeled it from his skin and tried to look into his eyes, but the swelling made that impossible. He whimpered and drew a ragged breath. The taste of my own blood filled my mouth. My extended fangs pierced into my lips. The sudden pain shocked me awake. I was dangerously close to feeding on the poor man in front of me, my only friend outside of the family. I jumped to my feet and stepped back. I'll explain everything. But right now, we have to get inside. That creature is going to catch up with us soon. I pointed towards the building. I assume this is your home. Your scent is strongest here. My scent? How? He strained to open his eyes and helped himself up to stand. Miri, tell me what's going on. I can't go home. I need a doctor. He reached out for me in wide, helpless sweeps of his arm before grabbing the branches of the hedge. My arms wrapped around my torso and I took another step back. I couldn't touch him. I didn't want to hurt him. He was different from other humans, but his blood lingered in the air. My body vibrated with the strain of holding back. William, please. My voice quaked. Between his blood and the creature getting closer, I felt it. My head swam and my stomach turned. He slumped against the topiary wall and pointed to an archway in the center. He limped towards it. As we approached the entrance, another scream rang out behind us. Then the creature was bounding at us from down the road. Its gurgling cries pierced the night. I swallowed the lump in my throat, grabbed William's arm, and sprinted through the archway. I glanced back to see that the creature had stopped behind us at the archway. It held its hands up as though faced with an invisible door and lifted its nose to sniff the air. It bellowed in our direction before turning and running back up Charing Cross. William moaned and pointed to a building at our right. I followed his direction, and once inside, he led me to the rest of the way up the stairs to his flat. We entered a small kitchenette attached to a sitting room. William stumbled over to the sink and splashed water on his face. I locked the door behind us and hurried to the window to check that the creature hadn't found another way into the courtyard. You gonna tell me what's going on? He asked between splashes. First, you come out of nowhere, and I'm fighting some bastard who I'm pretty sure had fucking claws and tiger teeth or something. Then you push him clear down the street like it's nothing, and carry me here in a second like freaking Liberty Bell. He stomped to the fridge, pulled an ice pack from the top, and then wrapped it in a towel and placed it on his face. With his free hand, he grabbed a bottle labeled fake schnapps and collapsed onto a short leather couch in the middle of the adjacent room. He put his feet up and took long, gulping swallows. Christ, Miriam, he coughed. What are you? Military super soldier? I turned towards him but kept silent. Could I trust him? Lately, it seemed that everyone I trusted had secrets. He was separate from my family, the first human I'd ever spoken to outside of Livesay who wasn't a victim or a servant, and the first not to treat me like a porcelain doll. A taste of his blood would tell me everything I'd need to know, whether I could trust him. But it seemed unnecessary. He was open to me. All I'd need to do was ask, and he wouldn't hold back. He trusted me. Otherwise, he wouldn't have let me into his home. He trusted me without knowing anything about me. Didn't I owe him the same? My name isn't Miriam. It's Rio Sylvain. I walked towards him and placed my hands on the back of a hard wooden chair across from the couch. I live with my family at Livesay, the island with the white trees. I thought no one lived there. I heard it was haunted. It is, by people from another time and beings from another plane. And that wretched thing out there came from us. I don't know how or who made it, but I can feel it. And you? What? You're like a ghost or something? The swelling had receded a bit, and he peeked over at me. Give me a friggin' break, babe. Something like that, I said, glad he'd stopped the bleeding. I could breathe again without trembling. Look, I know it's hard to believe. It took me weeks to truly come to terms with what I am, that I am not living, nor am I dead, that I will change but never age and never decay. I am immortal, and I gazed into his eyes. According to my father, I am the daughter of a god. He chuckled an unhappy sound. A god, huh? Don't suppose you can fix my face, can you? He waited, but I couldn't answer. I didn't know one way or the other. It wasn't a skill I'd been taught. He laughed and turned on his side to face me. Whatever you are, thank you. You saved my life. Don't be so sure about that, darling. Yuri leaned against the windowsill with his arms and ankles crossed. He had climbed through without either of us noticing. She saved your life from that creature, but you were doomed the moment you met her. Okay, so I think we'll actually stop there. This has been lovely, but there are some other things that I need to get done today, and also I think my friend's waking up, and my cat might still need me. So thank you all so much for being here, for watching. Oh, hello. Oh, sorry guys. I'm gonna fix the title so it's not so confusing. This is a different kind of reading. But thank you all so much for being here. Anyone who watches this now or in the future or at any time, because time doesn't really exist. I hope you have a beautiful, amazing, wonderful day. And I hope you're well out there. And please always remember that you are loved. I love you. Bye.